Welcome to Wasatch Weekends for this Monday, August 11th edition. I'm your host, Ben Roof. On today's show, we've got an expert from the governor's office joining us to talk about how local small businesses here in Utah can get involved with the Department of Defense. And then we've got another expert joining us to talk about how to get our mental health right after dealing with some crises. But first, a quick local announcement. If you have anything that you'd like to mention to the mayor of Park City, you're going to have that opportunity this Tuesday from 2 to 5 p.m. Mayor Nan Laurel is going to be answering questions and taking comments, and that's going to be at City Hall. So schedule your visit and stop by this Tuesday, 2 to 5 p.m. So let's take a quick look at the weather before we get on with the rest of the show.
This weather report is brought to you by Sun and Ski Sports, your new mountain sports headquarters.
Welcome back to the show. We've talked a lot about how COVID has changed our world and how in the process of recovering from the COVID days and kind of getting back into our post-pandemic lives, it's really taken us a little bit of effort to kind of change gears to get back to where we are. And we are now joined by Dr. Grant Brenner, who is an expert on grief and dealing with crises and getting our mental health back in order. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me on.
So, like I was saying a little bit there, it's kind of hard to get ourselves kind of back to where we were after COVID and really trying to get us kind of in that normal mindset. And do you have any advice on kind of how to start kind of retooling our minds to get back to where we were before the pandemic?
Yeah, I think the place to start, one, is to recognize that most people have normal reactions to extreme circumstances. Now, of course, COVID is unprecedented in our lifetimes. It's been about 100 years since we had a pandemic. And really, if you slow down and think about it, it almost feels like we've lost that time. And most people I speak to feel like both it was a very, very long time ago and kind of yesterday. So I think we have to recognize, number one, we're still processing it. This is new. There's been a lot of loss and grief, but most people have normal responses and get back on their feet without any specific intervention other than taking proper care of ourselves and those close to us.
Well, it certainly seemed to me like there hasn't been exactly a definite end or even a definite beginning, especially as the various reactions that we've done, like lockdowns, masking, social distancing, all of those things have sort of ebbed and flowed, and it's kind of hard to have that like demarcation point where it's like, okay, now we're done with the post-pandemic. We're done with all of these things and we're moving on to our normal lives. And it seems to me like things have been slow to kind of get back to normal. And a lot of people are, I guess, out of practice might be the right way to say it, in just kind of their normal social interactions.
Right. When a disaster or crisis hasn't settled down, we don't know what the new normal is. And actually, early on in the pandemic, while wildfires were raging in California, colleagues of mine in a group that I co-chair at the Group for the Advancement of Psychiatry, Disaster Trauma, and Global Health Committee came up with a chronic cyclical disaster model for just this reason, with the understanding that with something like a pandemic, forest fires, and other disasters that don't have a clear beginning and end, we need a model that allows us not only to account for these kind of rolling waves, but also for multiple things coming at us at the same time. So we're coming out of COVID, but there's a new wave. Probably people are going to be using vaccines for quite a long time. And we need to be more nimble. So we need to be able to be in a kind of a normal state. And then everyone needs to be a little bit of a crisis responder to be able to pivot resiliently back and forth as there is uncertainty.
Well, that makes a lot of sense to me. I mean, after all, the pandemic itself might be a little bit of a one-off, hopefully, in our lives, but crises definitely aren't, and that's something that's becoming more and more common. I mean, we've had wildfires even this summer in addition to hurricanes, and sounds to me like your system for kind of getting ourselves back in sorts is better for all crises, not necessarily just the pandemic specifically.
Yeah, definitely from the individual to the family to groups, local communities, and on a macro level. The model we developed is called the Chronic Cyclical Disasters Model, chroniccyclicaldisaster.info, and it takes into account the anticipation impact, prolonged adaptation phase, and then finally a growth and recovery phase. The growth and recovery phase is important because it covers both returning to baseline. A lot of people go back to their baseline. Other people will experience something called post-traumatic growth, which is grappling with what they've experienced, usually people who have more traumatic experiences, making sense of it and developing wisdom as well as pragmatic ways of being more resilient in the future. And there is a lot of data on the things that we can do to be more resilient and the things that are more innate that contribute to resilience.
So what would you say would be a first step or a best practices if you're really trying to just start cultivating that resilience in yourself?
I think taking stock, self-assessing, looking at what the various resilience factors are. People can look up the resilience prescription from Dennis Charney at Mount Sinai, which really covers well what the factors are. And some of those factors can be modified. Things like fostering active coping and mental flexibility, as well as challenging oneself in positive ways to grow. The mainstay is to build and maintain routines and have a good way of keeping tabs on how we're doing. So it's really important to be able to take your own pulse emotionally, mentally, physically, and have that as part of your self-care practices.
I would imagine that, especially after some sort of crisis or disaster, kind of getting back to that routine can be a huge challenge. Like, especially if your routine was based around your home and your home is no longer there, or your routine is, somebody was central to that routine and that somebody is no longer there. Do you have any advice for kind of how to help rebuild our routines in a world where our routines are missing a critical piece?
Yeah, that's a very good question. And obviously the more significant the loss or the change, the harder it is. And I don't mean this in a kind of a superficial way because it's a heavy lift in a lot of cases. The idea of being mentally flexible and adaptively coping is really important here. So, for example, if you find yourself in a shelter, what can you do to maintain normal routines if you're not in your home? In a lot of cases where we've responded to disaster events, as part of our intervention, will help people set up a kids corner, and so school can resume. And it's not going to be the same as going to the classroom in your regular school, but you can recreate that sense of normality. Where I see this with a lot of people, if they have an injury and they can't exercise the way they used to, there's plenty of alternative ways to exercise. And so that's why it's really important to have that cognitive or mental flexibility so that we can make changes that are adaptive while also acknowledging that things are different and accepting that.
Well, I would imagine that part of that issue is that without a routine, without something to do, you imagine just you sit there and you wallow and you get kind of bogged down in just the feelings of the moment. And would imagine, to me anyway, that having something to do, just that action, really helps kind of get you out of that funk and get you on a path to rebuilding and reconnecting and building that resilience. Do you have any advice for people who just need to kind of take that very first step?
Right. Another factor with resilience is social community. Perceived social connection is associated with resilience. But in reality, what happens a lot of times is there are going to be other people helping out. And so it's important to have a disaster or crisis response system. In terms of post-COVID, getting back into communities, seeking help, recognizing the need for help so that we can seek help, and reaching out to other people. And it is very important to remain active and do things, especially that are meaningful. So one thing that helps a lot of people is volunteering as part of a local community. And that can be a tremendously positive experience on many different levels, including helping with recovery and with rebuilding routines and resilience.
So if people are interested in learning more about how to build resilience and recover from crises, where can they go to find more information?
There are a lot of good resources available. The National Child Traumatic Stress Network has a lot of great online resources. The Substance Abuse Mental Health Services Administration .gov for the U.S. government has a lot of resources for individuals, families, and groups. And there are many other places. Vibrant Emotional Health is a group I'm on the board of and chair the advisory committee for the Crisis Emotional Care Team. That's also a resource people can look for.
And what was your website again?
My personal website is granthbrennermd.com. The Chronic Cyclical Disasters website is chroniccyclicdisasters.info.
Perfect. So if people are looking for checking out a little bit more information, that chroniccyclicaldisasters.info seems like a great place to go to get a little bit more information on how to help build that resilience. And of course, going out and joining a local organization seems like an incredibly powerful very first step.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on. And it's really important for people to look for local resources as well.
Dr. Brenner, thank you so much for joining us, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.
You too. Thanks very much.
And thank you so much. We will be right back with a short message after this. Welcome back to the show. We are now joined by Chuck Spence, the director of the Apex Accelerator program, here to talk about the U.S. Navy having a special small business program here in Salt Lake. Welcome to the program.
Thank you, Ben. It's great to be with you and Park City TV.
Well, it's so great to have you. So tell us a little bit about what's going on. And we've got the Navy coming in for a special event.
It sure is. Next week, Wednesday, September 13th. And this really is literally a first of its kind. Never has Navy come to Salt Lake City for an outreach event. Now, all joking aside, the nearest thing that we have to a seaport is maybe the sailing ship section over at the Great Salt Lake. But seriously, a first time ever outreach event by the Department of Navy coming to Salt Lake City to talk about business opportunities with that defense program.
So tell me a little bit about how that's supposed to work. I understand that the Navy does a lot of working with big businesses like Boeing and Raytheon, but how does the Navy interact with small businesses, especially in Utah?
Great question. Our keynote speaker and guest will be Miss Arvis Washington, and she's the Deputy Director of the Office of Small Business Programs for the Department of Navy. And they're coming to Salt Lake City specifically to talk to the small business community about business opportunities with small and disadvantaged businesses. They are looking for new cutting-edge emerging technologies. They are looking for innovative products that the small business community typically develops and comes up with. And they want those types of technologies in their industrial base. So that's certainly one reason why they're coming to Salt Lake City.
Fascinating. So they're really trying to see what they can find in, the startup space and the technology space a little bit more. And I would imagine that the Navy is not necessarily super interested in, say, our local coffee shops. Definitely a little bit more interested in maybe a new plastic manufacturer or a new type of outdoor gear.
That's absolutely true. We changed from the Procurement Technical Assistance Center to Apex Accelerator just about 9 months ago. And one of the reasons why they did that is that they want Apex Accelerators, our program, to focus and find companies who have products and services in what they call their 21 key technology areas. And that could be for anything from advanced materials to communication and networking technologies to integrated networking systems. And these are typically the types of technologies that the small businesses have.
Fascinating. So is there any particular businesses in the Salt Lake area or in greater Utah that's already taking advantage of some of these programs and potentially working with the Navy or working with the Apex Accelerator Group?
Oh, we have hundreds of companies already working with the Department of Defense. Those those companies who might be working with the Department of Navy specifically on for the first time, here they come, and you can ask questions. We're going to have matchmaking time with Miss Washington, and so our hope and our goal is to have increased opportunity for these small businesses to get contracts with the Department of Navy.
Awesome. So if people are looking to take advantage of this opportunity here on the 13th, how do they get involved and where is it?
Great question. It's going to be here in downtown Salt Lake at the World Trade Center building at 60 East South Temple on the lobby floor. We'll have signs and we'll have staff directing you into our training room. And here, of course, it's here at the City Creek Plaza where the World Trade Center building is located. It's Wednesday, September 13th. It will begin at 9 a.m. I'll say a few opening remarks. We're going to have Don McLean, who's the district deputy director from the Small Business Administration, say a few remarks. And then our keynote speaker is Miss Arvis Washington, again, deputy director with the Office of Small Business Programs with the Department of Navy. She'll speak for Q&A. We're going to provide lunch, and then we're going to move up here to the third floor where Apex Accelerator office is located. And we're going to have 3 conference rooms where our guests and attendees can come for some matchmaking events in the afternoon.
Awesome. So at the end of those matchmaking events, what would people who are involved potentially be looking for or expecting at the end of the day?
I think what they're going to gain by speaking to these, I should also throw out that in addition to Navy and the Small Business Administration, we're also going to have a representative. His name is Sean Stevenson from Hill Air Force Base. So we'll have those 3 individuals who can do some matchmaking activities with the small businesses. But Van, I think what the small businesses can expect is to hear about opportunities, contracting opportunities, procurement opportunities with the Department of Navy, with Hill Air Force Base, what their procurement process is like, what their goals are, what their accomplishments are, how to reach out and connect with them.
Well, it sounds to me like it's an amazing opportunity if you're interested in getting involved with defense contracting or with just generally starting that process of getting involved with potentially lucrative government contracts as a small business. It sounds like this is a really excellent both educational opportunity and networking opportunity to really get that ball rolling. Is there any final piece of information you have for us?
Definitely. For those that want to do business with the Department of Navy, that's why Apex Accelerators exist. We are government contracting experts in our program within the Governor's Office of Economic Opportunity. We are here as a resource to help you navigate sometimes those cloudy, muddy waters of federal procurement. And you can reach out to us at our website, which is business.utah.gov/APEX, APEX. I'll repeat that. business.utah.gov/APEX.
Awesome. Well, Chuck Spence, thank you so much for joining us and providing us with all of this fantastic information. And make sure to check out that website before the 13th and sign up for that event.
This weather report is brought to you by Sun and Ski Sports, your new mountain sports headquarters.
so much for tuning in to this Monday edition of Wasatch Weekends. Unfortunately, that's all the time we have. Thank you both to Chuck Spence and Dr. Brenner for giving us such valuable information. Of course, if you've missed any of our past episodes, you can always catch us at parkcity.tv. Until Friday, I'm your host, Ben Roof. This is Wasatch Weekends, and we will see you soon.